The call came on a crisp autumn evening, just as I was locking up my office. I glanced at my phone, my stomach tightening as I saw the familiar number. Mother. I hadn't heard from her in over a year, not since I'd finally mustered the courage to walk away from the toxicity that had defined my childhood. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But something, curiosity, perhaps, or that lingering need for approval I'd never quite shaken, made me answer. Claire? Her voice was thin, fragile in a way I'd never heard before. Claire, darling, we need you. I closed my eyes, leaning against the cool glass of my office door. The we stung more than it should have. Always we, never just her, never an acknowledgement of me as an individual rather than a tool to be used. What is it, Mother? I kept my voice neutral, professional. The same tone I used with difficult clients. It's everything, darling. The money, the house. Ethan's made some terrible mistakes. We're going to lose it all if you don't help us. Of course. It always came down to money with them. I thought of the sprawling estate where I'd grown up, cold and impersonal as a museum. Of Ethan, my older brother, with his expensive cars and designer clothes. Of Mother, presiding over it all like a queen, dispensing judgment and conditional love in equal measure. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I was surprised to find I meant it. Not for them, exactly, but for the little girl I'd once been, who'd believed in family and unconditional love. But I'm not sure what you expect me to do about it. You're so clever with money, darling. Your little business is doing so well. We just need you to look over some things, maybe make a few calls. You know how persuasive you can be. My little business. I looked around my office, at the awards on the walls, the stack of contracts on my desk. I'd built this from nothing, clawed my way up from the ruins of a toxic marriage and a family that had never believed in me. And now they wanted to use that success to save themselves. I'll think about it, I said finally. But I'm not promising anything. Oh, thank you, darling. I knew we could count on you. Come to dinner tomorrow night, and we'll discuss everything. She hung up before I could protest. I stood there for a long moment, phone in hand, feeling like I'd just agreed to step back into a cage I'd spent years escaping. As I drove home that night, the streets of the city blurring past, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a terrible mistake. But beneath that, there was something else. A small, traitorous part of me that hoped maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time, they'd see me for who I really was. I should have known better. The next evening, I found myself standing at the gates of Bennett Estate, my childhood home looming before me like something out of a Gothic novel. I smoothed down my blazer, a armor of professionalism against the emotional onslaught I knew was coming. The door opened before I could knock, revealing Ethan. My brother looked older than his 38 years, his once handsome face puffy and lined. He managed a weak smile. Claire Bear, he said, using the childhood nickname I'd always hated. You came. I said I would, I replied, stepping past him into the foyer. The house smelled the same, a cloying mix of expensive perfume and furniture polish that always made me feel slightly nauseous. Mother swept in, resplendent in a silk dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Darling, she exclaimed, air-kissing my cheeks. You look professional. I bit back a retort. Same old Margaret, unable to give a compliment without it doubling as an insult. Dinner was a tense affair. Mother dominated the conversation, regaling me with tales of charity galas and country club drama, as if the past year of silence had never happened. Ethan mostly pushed his food around his plate, occasionally shooting me furtive glances. It wasn't until dessert that they finally got to the point. So, Mother said, setting down her spoon with a delicate clink. I suppose you're wondering why we asked you here. I raised an eyebrow. I assumed it had something to do with the family finances. Ethan flinched. Mother's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Yes, well. There have been some unfortunate developments. Investments that didn't quite pan out. You know how volatile the market can be. I did know. I also knew that smart investors didn't lose everything on market volatility alone. How bad is it? I asked. Mother and Ethan exchanged a look. It was Ethan who finally spoke. "We're going to lose the house," he said quietly. "Maybe everything." I sat back, stunned despite myself. The Bennett estate had been in our family for generations. The idea of losing it seemed impossible. "How?" I demanded. "What happened?" Another loaded glance between them. Mother cleared her throat delicately. "Ethan had some business ventures that didn't quite work out. And there were some, personal expenses that got out of hand." I turned to my brother. "What kind of business ventures?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "It doesn't matter now. What matters is fixing it. And you can help us do that, Claire. You're good with money, with people. If anyone can turn this around, it's you." I felt a familiar anger rising in my chest. The same anger that had fueled me through years of therapy, through rebuilding my life after Daniel, through every success I'd achieved in spite of my family's lack of faith in me. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You gambled away the family fortune on some half-baked schemes, and now you want me to swoop in and save you? After years of telling me I'd never amount to anything?" Mother reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of touching mine. "Darling, that's all in the past. We've always believed in you. Why do you think we came to you now, in our hour of need?" I laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the opulent dining room. "Because you have no one else left to turn to. Because all your rich friends have finally seen through you." Ethan slammed his hand on the table, making the crystal glasses rattle. "Dang it, Claire. This isn't just about us. This is your legacy too. Are you really going to let it all crumble because of some petty childhood grievances?" I stood up slowly, looking between them. My mother, all elegant desperation. My brother, barely contained rage and fear. For a moment, I saw us as we had been, children playing in this very room, before money and expectations had twisted us all. "I'll look into it," I said finally. "I'm not promising anything, but I'll see what I can do. I'll need to see all the financial records, every transaction for the past 5 years." The relief on their faces was palpable. Mother stood, arms outstretched as if to embrace me. I stepped back. "I'm doing this for the sake of our family name," I said. "Not for you. And when this is over, we're going to have a long talk about the future of this family." As I drove home that night, the weight of their expectations heavy on my shoulders, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. Some crucial piece of the puzzle that would make sense of this whole mess. I had no idea then how right I was, or how deep the deception really went. The next few weeks were a blur of spreadsheets, bank statements, and increasingly concerning discoveries. I'd taken a leave of absence from my own business, much to the concern of my partners, to focus on unraveling the Gordian knot of the Bennett family finances. What I found made me sick to my stomach. It wasn't just bad investments or overspending, though there was plenty of that. Hidden beneath layers of shell companies and offshore accounts was a pattern of fraud and embezzlement that stretched back years. Charitable donations that never made it to their intended recipients. Business loans taken out against non-existent collateral, and at the center of it all, a name that made my blood run cold: Daniel. My ex-husband. I confronted Ethan first, cornering him in father's old study. The room still smelled of leather and cigars, as if our father's ghost lingered, watching us with disapproval. "Want to tell me why my ex-husband's name is all over these documents?" I asked, slapping a stack of papers down on the mahogany desk. Ethan paled, his eyes darting to the door as if looking for an escape route. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," I snapped. "Not anymore. Daniel's company shows up as a consultant on half a dozen failed ventures. Ventures that just happen to coincide with large withdrawals from the family accounts." My brother seemed to deflate before my eyes, collapsing into our father's old chair. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he mumbled. "Daniel said he had inside information, guaranteed returns. We were just trying to grow the family fortune." "By breaking the law?" I was shouting now, years of pent-up frustration boiling over. "By working with the man who nearly destroyed me?" Ethan had the grace to look ashamed. We didn't think you'd ever find out." Mother said. Mother? I cut him off. Mother knew about this? The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. I found Margaret in the solarium, serenely arranging flowers as if our world wasn't crumbling around us. She looked up as I entered, her face a mask of motherly concern. Darling, you look dreadful. Have you been sleeping? Did you know? I asked without preamble. About Daniel, about the fraud? For a moment, just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw calculation in her eyes, weighing lies and truths, before she settled on a strategy. Claire, sweetheart, you have to understand. We were desperate. After your father died, things were so difficult. Daniel approached us with an opportunity. Stop. My voice was ice. Just stop. I've heard enough lies to last a lifetime. I laid out what I'd found, the fake charities, the embezzled funds, all of it. With each revelation, I watched my mother shrink, her carefully cultivated image of aristocratic dignity crumbling. What are you going to do? She asked when I'd finished. For the first time in my life, I heard real fear in her voice. I looked at her, this woman who had shaped so much of my life with her criticism and manipulation. I thought of all the times I'd sought her approval, all the times I'd twisted myself into knots trying to be the daughter she wanted. I'm going to fix it, I said. Not for you. For me. For the little girl who deserved better than what you gave her. And when I'm done, we're going to have a reckoning. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Claire, she said, sounding older and more vulnerable than I'd ever heard her. I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't turn back. I know, I said. But it's too late. As I walked out of the solarium, out of the house that had never really been a home, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, maybe for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I had to do. The Bennett legacy was built on lies and manipulation. It was time to tear it all down and build something new from the ashes. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I called in every favor, worked every angle I knew to start damage control on the Bennett family's illegal activities. It wasn't about saving them anymore, it was about minimizing the fallout and trying to make things right for the people who had been hurt by our family's greed. I was in the middle of a tense call with our family's longtime lawyer when my office door burst open. Daniel strode in, all fake charm and expensive cologne. Claire, baby, he said with that smile that used to make my knees weak. We need to talk. I held up a hand, finished my call, and then fixed him with a stare that could have frozen heck. We have nothing to talk about, Daniel. Get out before I call security. He held up his hands in a placating gesture. Now, let's not be hasty. I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. It concerns your family's current situation. My blood ran cold. Of course he knew. He was in the thick of it. You have 5 minutes, I said. Then I'm calling the police. Daniel's smile widened. That's my girl. Always the fighter. He sat down uninvited, lounging in the chair across from my desk. Here's the deal, Claire. I know you've been poking around in things that don't concern you. Stirring up trouble. But I'm willing to make all of this go away. For old time's sake. I raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. It's simple. You back off. Let things run their course. In exchange, I make sure none of the, shall we say, less savory details of your family's business practices come to light. Everyone wins. I stared at him, this man I had once loved, and felt nothing. No fear, no anger, not even disgust. Just a profound weariness. No deal, I said quietly. Daniel's charm evaporated. Don't be stupid, Claire. You have no idea what you're up against. Your mother, your brother, they'll go to jail. The Bennett name will be ruined. Is that what you want? I stood up slowly, bracing my hands on my desk. What I want, Daniel, is for you to understand something. You don't scare me anymore. None of this scares me. I've spent my entire life being manipulated and controlled by people like you, and I'm done. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my office. You're going to disappear from my life, permanently this time. And if I ever see or hear from you again, I'll bury you so deep in legal troubles, you'll need an archaeologist to dig you out. Do we understand each other? For a moment, I thought he might argue. But something in my face must have convinced him I meant every word. He stood, straightening his expensive jacket. You're making a big mistake, Claire, he said, but the threat sounded hollow. No, I replied. I'm finally fixing my biggest mistake. Goodbye, Daniel. After he left, I sank back into my chair, my hands shaking. But beneath the adrenaline, I felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Pride. The family meeting was set for a week later. I spent the intervening time preparing, gathering every scrap of evidence, every daunting detail of the Bennett family's misdeeds. It wasn't just about confronting them anymore. It was about making a clean break, once and for all. When I arrived at the estate, the tension was palpable. Mother and Ethan were waiting in the library, both looking like they'd aged years in the past few weeks. Good. Let them feel a fraction of the stress they'd put me through. All right, I said, setting my briefcase on the antique coffee table. Let's talk. What followed was the most brutal 2 hours of my life. I laid out everything I'd discovered, every fraudulent transaction, every backroom deal, every lie. I watched as their faces crumbled, as the last vestiges of denial fell away. Why? I asked when I'd finished. Why do all of this? We had money, status, everything. Mother looked away, but Ethan met my gaze. It was never enough, he said quietly. Dad always pushed for more, bigger deals, more prestige. And after he died, I guess we didn't know how to stop. I shook my head, a mixture of pity and disgust roiling in my stomach. Well, it stops now. Here's what's going to happen. I outlined my plan, a full confession to the authorities, a massive restructuring of the family assets, reparations to those who had been defrauded. It would leave us with a fraction of our former wealth, but it was the only way to avoid total ruin. You can't be serious, Mother breathed. Claire, this is our legacy. Your legacy. No, I said firmly. This mess is your legacy. I'm choosing a different path. I stood, gathering my things. You have 24 hours to decide. Either you do this my way, or I go to the authorities myself. Your choice. As I turned to leave, Ethan's voice stopped me. I'll do it, he said. Whatever it takes. I'm tired of living like this. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. I saw the brother I used to know, before money and expectations had twisted him into someone I didn't recognize. Okay, I said softly. Then let's fix this. Together. Mother remained silent, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. But as I walked out of the library, out of the house that had been both haven and prison, I knew I'd made the right choice. The next few months were a blur of legal meetings, press conferences, and hard decisions. The Bennett name was dragged through the mud, but slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild. Not as the wealthy, untouchable family we'd once been, but as something new. Something honest. Ethan threw himself into the work of making amends, surprising me with his dedication. Mother retreated from public life, unable or unwilling to face the new reality we'd created. And me? I went back to my little business, now more successful than ever thanks to the reputation I'd gained as a whistleblower and reformer. It's been a year since that fateful family meeting. The dust has settled, the legal battles are mostly behind us, and I'm standing on the grounds of what used to be Bennett Estate. The sprawling mansion is gone, donated to the city and converted into a community center. In its place, I'm overseeing the construction of something new, the Claire Bennett Women's Shelter. A place for women escaping situations like the one I fled years ago. A place of new beginnings. As I watch the workers laying the foundation, I feel a presence beside me. Ethan, looking healthier and happier than I've seen him in years. It's really happening, he says, a note of wonder in his voice. I nod. It really is. We stand in silence for a moment, the sounds of construction a promise of better things to come. I'm proud of you, you know, Ethan says suddenly. For all of this. For standing up to us, for doing the right thing. I feel a lump in my throat. Thanks, I manage. I'm proud of you too. For changing. He smiles, a real smile that reaches his eyes. Better late than never, right? As we turn to leave, I catch sight of a familiar figure watching from the street. Mother. She doesn't approach, doesn't say anything. But she nods, once, before turning and walking away. It's not forgiveness. It's not reconciliation. But it's something. A recognition, perhaps, of the strength she never wanted to see in me. I take a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I feel truly, completely free. Free of expectations, free of the weight of a toxic legacy. The Bennett name might be tarnished, but Claire Bennett is just getting started. And this time, I'm building my life and my legacy on a foundation of truth, compassion, and resilience. It's not the ending I ever expected. But as I look out over the construction site, at the promise of new beginnings rising from the ashes of the old, I realize it's the ending I always deserved, and more importantly, it's one heck of a new beginning.